I'll take
All
some of
right.
that energy, Fran.
Sorry?
The brown bread, but yeah, like a
I'll take some of that energy. Thank you.
yeah, not that.
All right.
We
All
need
right.
to dance.
Let's dive in. Yeah, we need to dance, right?
Yes.
Maybe Brenda would, maybe
It's
the
all
ancestors, maybe Brenda would usher in the music of the ancestors for us. I don't know what wants to happen,
There she is.
but she is here. Brenda, we're so happy to see you with us this week, this time. Please open us up, sister. Oh, you're muted, by the way.
Here we are.
There we go.
Yay. Well, hello, beautiful ones. It's so lovely to see you. I'm very honored to be with you again. I missed you so much last week. I was in a location that didn't have internet that was working, so I was very sad to be separated from you, but in my heart, I was connected. So yeah, dropping in. I do feel like we need some dancing and some joy, but also Spirit told me to pick a card before we begin dancing and singing together so that we can drop in. So one of the cards that I brought with me today are my Rumi cards, which I really, really love. And it felt really appropriate for starting us off today. So I'm going to invite everyone just to get centered, to close their eyes and feel their feet on the ground, and to sit in a way that makes you feel your dignity, makes you feel your spine, your connection above as well. I'm going to invite you to just slow your breathing so that you can feel it perhaps moving from your chest down into your belly so that you're present in your body. And as you're present in your body, I'm going to read something for you. So just be listening as you're breathing and feeling your body. And the first is a poem by Rumi. The taste of bitterness becomes sweetness in love. The searching in the dark finds the light of faith revealed in love. Love transforms thistles into jasmine. Love layers heaven and gifts us with wings to soar into its mystery. Love transforms our every thought into a desire of the heart. Oh, love, how divine is your loving, is your luring. Beauty flows from your unseen face. Your very nature is radiant with joy. Your manifest vibrant hues in every flower. Your touch dazzles all of creation. Every particle is attracted towards you, longing to unite and dwell in you. The Divine Mother offers me her rose. How rich that gift may be. I tear my flesh on its thorns and my blood flows. I curse myself for carelessness, and yet, in my desire to grasp this beautiful gift, it happens again and again. Then I realize such is its scent, its beauty. How can I be tentative in my approach to such beauty? My senses are drenched in beauty, and I long to inhale the exquisite perfume, to reach for the velvet dew of the petals, soft and delicate under my touch. Perhaps I will be scraped and I will bleed, yet that is not enough to deter me, to prevent me from accepting this beautiful gift. The magnificence of the bloom renders the struggle to enjoy it as a worthy, noble, essential pursuit. Of course, I understand something so precious must be protected and must be allowed to live more than this, to thrive. So these thorns are hooks that allow for growth for those that would bear the pain of the ascent to the rose's blooming heart. And those thorns are barbs that keep away those that would consume the creation without appreciating its worth and its beauty. Yes, those thorns serve essential purpose. I cannot begrudge them, for I love the root, and so I love what it is necessary for her to be. So I love the thorns too. With the Rumi card, there's always a sacred honoring ritual. So I'm going to invite you to place your hands in an open palmed, upward facing posture at the front of your chest, as if open and ready to receive. And you'll repeat after me, so we'll say this together. Rumi, who loves me unconditionally.
Rumi, who
loves me unconditionally.
Guide the spiritual gift of the Divine Mother.
Guide the
spiritual gift of the Divine Mother.
The blessing of the celestial rose.
The blessing of the celestial rose.
Into my open hands.
Into my
open hands.
And into my open heart.
And
into my open heart.
That I may know myself.
That I may know myself.
To be a cherished holy child.
To be a
cherished holy child.
Of the universe.
Of the universe.
With my life unfolding.
With my life unfolding.
According to sublime grace.
According to sublime grace.
Help me to surrender.
Help me to surrender.
Whatever stands in the way.
Whatever stands in the way.
Of such fulfillment now.
Of such
fulfillment now.
May I be blessed.
May I be
blessed.
To release pain.
To release pain.
And be open to joy.
And
be open to joy.
Through merciful compassion.
Your
merciful compassion.
So be it.
So be it.
Now close your hands in prayer at your heart and bow your head. You have finished your sacred honoring ritual. And so I'm going to invite you to just speak words of a sound of love to each other. Let's see what Spirit wants us to say, because I do feel the voices need to be heard today, together in unison. I think we'll do what we've done before. I'll ask you to put your hands over your heart and say, I am loved.
I am loved.
I am loved.
I am a blessing.
I am blessing.
I am blessing.
I am sacred just the way I am.
I am
sacred just the way I am.
I have dignity.
I have
dignity.
I have wisdom and gifts for the whole.
I have
wisdom and gifts for the whole.
And then go ahead and show your fingers towards your loved ones on the call and say, you are loved.
You are loved.
You are loved. You are a blessing.
You are blessing.
You are sacred just the way you are.
You are
sacred just the way you are.
You have dignity.
You have dignity.
You have wisdom and gifts for the whole.
You have wisdom
and gifts for the whole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. We certainly missed you last week. We're glad for your presence here.
Yes.
Last week, Fran opened with song and humming, and we also are grateful for that, Fran. Thanks for doing that for us last week. I want to greet every one of you. Could we just open our mics and just greet each other very briefly? It's just hello in a language you want to.
Hola.
Hello.
Hello.
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. So that's
okay. You're welcome. So I would like us to dive in. We're going to be I'll just be offering Erin, can we mute the mic for now? Just great. So we're going to be I just want to offer a brief meditation or provocation. Today I'm happy that Tita Lenny and Brother Jürgen are here co-holding this space with us. I'm so grateful for their presence. They're elders in my life, and I think increasingly in yours as well. So I'm glad they're here to open up space for new things to come through. And I'm looking forward to that. I want to offer, like I said, a brief meditation. And I think this is best done with our eyes closed. I'll be reading something, and then I'll be inviting us to touch something. But I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment, just to get intimate with darkness for a while, for the time being. Okay. I'll read this as slowly as I can, and then I'll raise a few questions and thoughts. When you get to the end of the tunnel, where the light awaits, don't walk off rudely into his arms. Turn towards the smoldering darkness whence you came, and thank her for shaping you, for scaring you, for wounding you, and defeating you, and shaking you, because in her womb you were thoroughly purged and made fresh for new glimpses of wonder. And as you walk further into the domineering light, the dark will bless you with a gift to remind you that you are not as contained or as limited as you think, that there is more to you than what meets the educated eye, that whatever you do, the whole universe does the same along with you, imitating you with a childish keenness, and that you're never, ever alone. That's why shadows were invented. While our eyes are still closed, I want to share this. You know, it's no wonder that the old alchemists put darkness first in the process of transformation. It begins, I believe, with Nigredo, and then it moves to albedo and then rubido. This is just a way of describing a threefold process of transformation according to the old alchemists. A psychologist named Carl Jung came into the picture and brought it to light, if you will, warning us to pay attention to the darkness, to dark places. That light has a logic, but darkness also has its own logic that we hardly pay attention to. We like to think of light at the end of the tunnel or getting lost in the dark. I think it also needs to be said that it's possible to get lost in the light, and that light can become very totalitarian. That's why we need the darkness. That's why we need shadows. Shadows chastise us. They're tricksters. They're archetypal tricksters that invite us to new places. If you really think about it, give it some attention, you'll find that things grow in the dark. The child gestates in the darkness of the womb. Vision happens in the darkness of the occipital lobe. A seed breaks and discombobulates in the darkness of loamy soil. It seems we need the darkness to grow. And maybe because our civilization is so colonized with light, with the brightness of light. We have demonized the darkness. Maybe here our work is also to decolonize darkness, to welcome it back without demonizing it, without making it a negative aspect of our psyche. So I want to invite us into the deep work. And maybe this is an introduction to what Tita and Brother Jürgen are offering us today. The dark work of becoming intimate, the deep work of becoming intimate with the dark, of learning to touch the shadows, of learning to be intimate with the next. I would like us to do something when we are done with this session, to find a way to give gratitude to that which makes us uncomfortable. Carl Jung would say that the way to end suffering is to introduce a higher form of suffering. And maybe that's the suffering we're called to hold space for. This breach in the wall, this tearing apart, this traumatic loss of direction. I want to invite us to give thanks, to show gratitude to the purging of shadows, to the tentacular reach of death, composting our boundaries. Find a way to do it in whatever form you feel called to after this session. Okay, we can open our eyes. I welcome you again, and I want to invite Tita and Brother Jürgen to dance with us and to open up the rabbit hole so we can swim in there. Brother, sister.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Bayo, for that beautiful opening. And what we want to focus on this morning is storytelling. And part of the art of being with a story is witnessing, just being present to a story without responding, without immediately coming to conclusion what the meaning is, without using labels. And so we want to do some circle work this morning. And Tita, anything you want to say here at this moment? You need to unmute.
Should we do the visualization first, and then I will give instructions for the small sessions?
Okay.
So let's do that, Jürgen.
Okay, so this is basically what we want to do, and it's a way of getting us ready. I want to invite you for a moment to close your eyes and go inside, find a way to center yourself and develop inner attention, or continuing with your inner attention. For a moment, reflect upon conversations that you've had the last few days, maybe during the last week, and just ponder those conversations and see what were they like. Some may have been easy, some may have been a little bit more challenging or difficult. Whatever it was, just take a moment to ponder and sense those conversations. And as you remember these conversations, see if there are any labels that come to mind, labels that you may have used that may have come up during the conversations. See what happened in your head. What were labels that came up for you during these conversations, whatever that is. Just take stock of what these labels are and kind of collect them for a moment in your memory. And as you get more labels, maybe you have one, maybe you have three, maybe you have five, maybe you have more labels that came to mind. See that you find a way in your imagination to hold these labels in one of your hands. And then imagine you're going outside somewhere, find a place somewhere where you can dig a little hole or scrape away the leaves and put the labels into the earth. And just imagine yourself doing that. Holding the labels in your hand, taking them outside, and giving them to the earth. In whichever fashion you want to do this. And when you're done with that process, maybe sit down right there where you're burying the labels and pick one of those conversations and listen to it again and see if there is any difference now that you've buried a label that has come up during that conversation, and see if you can listen in again on that conversation, maybe in a slightly different way. And then in your own time, you can open your eyes and we will go to our next step whenever we are ready. Taking your time to come back, grounding yourself in the present. Okay, Lenny.
Good morning. Welcome back. when Jürgen and I were processing what happened between Saturday and today, one of the things we agreed on was that we haven't told each other our stories, to develop an intimacy and to really get to know each other. We realized that we're almost towards the end of the course, and we've never really had the chance to just listen to each other's stories. So what we wanted to do this morning is to make space for that. And so what will happen in the next 30 minutes is that Erin is going to put us in small groups of about 8. And in these small groups, we will spend about 3 minutes per person to tell your story. How do you self-identify? And there are no guidelines, just tell your story as you know it, and as you feel it. And we will be with you, of Isoke and Erin and Christopher, Bayo and Jürgen. We will be facilitating one group each, and we will be monitoring the time. And in a talking circle like this, the appropriate response when a person has finished telling their story in 3 minutes, which is impossible, but we can do it in 3 minutes for now, is just say thank you. Thank you that we have heard, and there will be no time for commenting or responding to each other's story, but just really listen and be with that person's story at the moment. And maybe at the beginning of the session, of the circle, if you could just spend a minute to quietly think about what you might want to say, so that you're not thinking of what you're going to say while another person is talking. And then at the end of about 30 minutes, am I echoing?
No, I think Siri is speaking to you.
No. So when you are done taking turns, you can appoint someone from your group to report back to the big circle when we all get back in the big circle. And the question for that person who is going to report back would be, what have you heard in your circle that you feel is important to share to the entire group, that can be shared with the entire group? Okay? So, yes, that's all we're going to do is storytelling in the next half hour. So where's Erin? Erin, you're going to move us now into small groups?
I am. I'm going to move you now into small groups. I'm just getting some messages from people who are needing to leave. So Priya, thank you for being here and making adjustments to the size of groups. It looks like we have groups of around 8 to 9 right now,
Right.
so that you know. And so that should give enough time for everyone to share. And so each group will have one kind of host or steward of the conversation from our little team. And I'll start the clock for 30 minutes, but I'm also going to come and pop in after 30 minutes and just check in with you and make sure that everyone has had a chance to speak, because we really want to make sure everyone's voices are heard. And just give me 1 second. I want to even out one little thing. So you'll get a message, a pop-up window that will invite you to go to your breakout session. And I will send a little message out when half the time is up. And I just need to unmute the folks who are on the phone too.
Right.
And if you have any trouble, there's a little button that says help us out, and I'll get a message and I'll be here in the main room attentive to your needs, so I can pop in and try to troubleshoot any technological issues. So I think we're ready to go. Here we go.
Erin. our siblings with phone numbers can also, who are participating with phone numbers, can join, right?
Yep, it should be
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So you guys are
Great.
all off on your way.
Tea break. Tea break now. Tea break.
Coffee break.
Tea break. Okay, coffee.
Okay. I'm gonna.
Also stretch break, fart break.
Fart break.
Dance break. Dance break.
It's 11/11 on November 11th for anyone.
Oh, that's holiday time.
The beginning of Carnival.
Oh, carnival where?
Well, that's how they do it in Germany on the
Oh.
11 at 11 o'clock and 11 minutes.
Okay.
But I think it's in the evening probably.
Oh.
But I'm sure one of us is in that time zone. So
Yeah.
In Canada, it's Memorial Day. It's what we call Remembrance Day for people who died in wars.
All right. Are we reporting back? How many minutes do we want for report back, Jürgen?
well, how about 3 minutes each?
Okay.
Or two minutes maybe?
Yeah. Well, in my group, Kuyen was the one who was going to report back. So is he back? Are we starting?
Yeah.
I think we need to wait a minute here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some people who are not back yet.
How were your sessions?
Very good. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
It's good
Yeah.
to hear each other's stories.
Yeah, very beautiful.
There was some farting in our session too. Really nice. Nice sounds.
Are you saying you want more of the nice sounds?
No. You can let it rip if you want.
And everybody has appointed someone to report back?
So we're still appointing, right? Okay. We have a winner. We have Anna. Anna is doing it for us. Yes. Thank you, sister.
All right.
So we're good.
I guess we can start with Anna then.
Yeah.
Okay, Anna. Unmute yourself.
Just mute myself.
I'm gonna set the timer to 2 minutes.
It will not be longer than 2 minutes.
That's what we're saying. Okay.
In our group, we are people who feel very nervous when it's their time to speak to the group. We're storytellers. We're artists with sensitive souls. We're travelers who are meeting all sorts of weird people and learning from them. We are knights sealed in strong armor. We're nerds. We are almost at our 80th birthday. We are mothers of beautiful half-dressed children. We are animals. We are storytellers.
Woo!
Thank you.
You have 1 minute. You want to give up your 1 minute?
We freely gift it to the next group.
Yeah,
All right.
pass it
In
on,
the
pay it
spirit,
forward.
in the spirit of gift culture. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. All right. Brenda, who is your reporter back?
I am. So I think one of the biggest themes that came up for us was that we have identities, but our identities shift. And there's a shedding that happens. And then there's a questioning of what does it mean when an identity that we've had for most of our lives changes and disappears. So I heard in our group, I heard fear, I heard longing to work in circle, I heard this tension between being an introvert and being an extrovert, or being an extrovert and being an introvert, and what it means to hold ceremony and be in community, but also need this space for direct communication with the sacred. Some people held that by going outside. Someone said that she needed to stand on solid rock with water washing over her toes. I heard that different people have different relationships with their bodies. 2 people are experiencing cancer in our group and feeling in isolation because of that. And this longing for holistic ways to care for bodies. I heard that somebody, and all of us, I think in different ways, this question of what does it mean to be the child you think your parents want you to be? And how does that impact the rest of your life? And what happens when you're no longer that child? And how do your decisions change? People talked about the ways they express through writing and singing and music, dance, and this thing of being a shapeshifter, or shedding skins, and what happens when identity shifts.
Thank you, Shanti.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who is next? Hi, Hillary. Unmute yourself.
Hi. So in our group, first of all, I want to share the lens that I heard all of this through, and it was through great, great empathy. That is what opened up for me as I listened to all the members of my group. The way that each of us is living this beautiful struggle, and the way that our stories intersect, and it just opened my heart. So with that, we are struggling with the current mental health paradigm and the way it shuts down the voices inside of us, the voices of guidance perhaps. We feel homeless and between cultures. We're wanting the narrative to be neat and tidy, but we're afraid to betray ourselves to whiteness. We're transitioning from heteronormative family structures to something that's more authentic and maybe more queer. We are on spiritual paths that are represented through the expression of color. We are 3-year-old medicine women who sit near the basement and work with the spirits. We are healing from seeing our ancestors as invasive species on this continent. We have disabled siblings who help us see how the playing field is not level and open our hearts to the realities of others. We're recovering from sadness that has followed us through generations. And we're also afraid. We're afraid of keeping it on the surface by just reciting our bio, because we want to go deeper, but we don't always know how. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. That was perfect. Next group.
I think that's probably our group. People in our group were a little shy about reporting, but they gave me permission to say a little piece. But I do want to invite my group members to add on to this little piece. But you know, it was really evident as people shared that identity is not, you know, it's something formed in that there's so much of identity didn't really have to do with any of our desires to be something or our own volition, but just historical processes and family dynamics and all kinds of different factors, and that identity can be really fluid. It's political, it's familial, it's cultural, and it felt just the very question of how someone self-identifies felt like a hard question with such dynamic factors. So anyone from my group want to add something? Fran, you were.
I do want to add that we are siblings of bullies, descendants of colonizers and islanders, and warriors. And some are reflecting religion of Christianity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Kuyan, I think it's your turn, Kuyan.
Yes. Hi. In our group, I think the most common theme is that we are all immigrants straddling among many different cultures. I think none of us was ever live in just one country, and I think on average it's 2 or 3. And I heard a lot of stories about moving and trying to make sense of the different places that we have belonged to. So places is a big theme, and I think that relates to how a lot of us identify, or how the group started to talk about identity as where we were born and where our families fall. So we had a strong geographical and familial sense. I also heard, because of that, I also heard a lot of reflection about relationship dynamics, either with our parents, or our siblings, or our lovers, our partners, and how that has shaped us. There's a lot of gratitude, I think, in the relationship that we had in our lives, at least from I heard in the group. And I think that also translates to the kind of things that people like to do. Surprisingly, one way that we describe ourselves is through what we like to do, from traveling to cooking to doing small things. So I thought that was also quite interesting to hear. And I came with just my lens is to hear how we identify ourselves, and I saw that it was interesting. We didn't talk a lot about what we do. I mean, some of us mentioned our career and a profession, but most don't define ourselves that way. And it makes me think of the last thing is, just to say, the last thing, maybe the only thing we have in common is that we all have a name. But beyond that, I don't think there's anything in common.
I like that. Thank you, Kuyan. Is that all the groups, about 5 groups, Erin? Yeah? I think so, right? So Jürgen and I wanted to offer some comments about ethno-autobiography and storytelling, and I'll let Jürgen start. Go ahead, Jürgen, unmute yourself.
I first want to really appreciate the stories that I've heard in our small group. For me, listening to stories and taking the time to witness our stories is really the foundation of any of this kind of work. And so often it is hard to do because, you know, I've certainly been trained to interpret, to label, to theorize about what people say, you know, and all those kinds of things that you do when you go to school, when you go to college, when you go to university. And, you know, these things have their limited usefulness, but really what gets lost in it is you know, hearing the story that somebody else tells as the story that they are telling, rather than through the filter of our labels. And so that's really, you know, I think a really important spiritual practice. And when we do that, I always find that magic happens when people actually get into that space of sharing and honoring each other's story. What we do in ethno-autobiography is really trying to, you know, there's sort of a, let's say a map that deals with all the different qualities of ourselves. And part of the storytelling, why I'm doing that is, certainly in our society, there are only certain aspects that are emphasized and other aspects that are neglected. And so we are unconscious to those aspects, or we dissociate from those aspects. So part of it is when we sort of engage in a storytelling practice to see that we allow ourselves to make the story complete, by looking at ourselves not just as an isolated individual, but in the context that we're in, the gender role that we are enacting, that we are playing, that is us. Then, sorry about that. And where we are living, our place, our connection with nature, the communities that we are a part of, and all these different aspects that really, in order to make our story more complete and healing, we need to look at all those aspects and see, you know, where are we in relation to these parts, and rather than seeing them as something that is outside of ourselves, seeing them as something that is also inside of us. So much of you know, what the Western sense of identity, individualism trains us that I'm over here and all these other things are over here, while in fact, you know, they're a part of us. And when we engage in storytelling and engage with these different qualities, then we become more complete. So for me, that's a very you know, important spiritual practice that is very very healing, and to my mind is really critical in overcoming the so often we are in these bipolar situations, these oppositional situations, which are really so simplistic and painful and traumatic when we go there. But really to hear, you know, we just heard, you know, the name is the only thing that we have in common. Our stories are so different, and acknowledging that and engaging with that is one of the greatest gifts that we can give to each other. and witnessing and finding a way to throw out our labels and really open our ears and our hearts and our minds to, what is coming our way is, a really important spiritual practice. And I'll stop there and let Lenny add.
I would like to tell a story that happened in my class a couple of years back. There was one student who was an evangelical Christian and another student who was Buddhist. And every chance she got, the evangelical Christian would try to save everybody in class, and of course it made the students uncomfortable. And one day, the Christian said to the Buddhist, I think you're going to hell and I'm going to pray for you. And then the Buddhist said, thank you, I need all the prayers I can get. And then I asked the Christian student, I said, when did you become a Christian? Tell us your story. And then she said, well, when I was growing up, my parents were hippies. The house was unstructured. There was no discipline. There was no this and that. And then I got sick, and then I was healed by a Christian minister. And when the class held that story, it's as if everything softened up. The attitude towards the Christian, the attitude towards the Buddhist, and the nature of the class conversation was one of, wow, now I know what makes you this, evangelical Christian. Now I understand. And so when we tell our stories to each other, there is a softening up, especially when we tell stories about our shadows, when we tell stories about our ancestors and the trauma they may have experienced, when we tell stories about our historical formation and our racial formation. And this is what we're seeing in the classes that Jürgen and I teach, is that when the white students begin to talk about specific stories about what happened to their ancestors, how they got to be where they are, how they earned this privilege, and so on, what we begin to see and unpack is that there's so much pluralism towards whiteness that you couldn't just say that person is white, or that person is a person of color. So when we work with ethno-autobiography, we unpeel all of the layers, even while our gaze is turned towards the center of the imperial gaze, so to speak. Racial discourse nowadays, at least in the United States, seem to be focused on whiteness and unpacking white privilege and white fragility and so on. But part of the work also, when we do this work, is to expand that to add indigenous elements to the work of unpacking. So the ancestral work is important. The working with our dreams is important. Connecting to the places where we are now, or the places that are important to us. Connecting with nature, connecting with myths, mythology, myth-telling. What are those larger myths in the culture or in our ancestral past that shape us? And then we talk about spirituality or faith or agnosticism or atheism, whatever position students bring to that aspect of their lives. And then we talk about community. What does it mean to be in community? And very often, because of growing up in an individualistic, highly hierarchical, patriarchal culture, the aspect of community building is sometimes difficult to get to. But what we try to build then, when we're doing this course, is to simulate a sense of community by asking people to be vulnerable, by asking people to work with the shadow, there is that. And then we look at history, specifically, of course, in our context, working with American history and globalization and capitalism and all those things. So when you can see this storytelling self and all of those indigenous elements informing the storytelling self, then what happens then to the labels that we so easily use to judge each other, to evaluate, or to be critical of each other? We're not saying, we're not bypassing in this way, you know. I think when we try to include all of these elements, it you cannot bypass anything when you look each of these elements. So so we would just like to encourage you to look at ethno-autobiography as a process, as a map, when we're trying to work with these difficult topics. Do you have the community healing model, indigenous healing model, Jürgen?
Oh,
that
yeah.
we found.
Give me a second. Yes.
Yeah, we found this on online. It's created by the Native Wellness Institute, and it's a very beautiful map that came from Brenda, actually. And I'm glad that Brenda shared that, but it's a very complete map. There it is. Indigenous values-based community healing. And we will post this and share it. Oops, it's hard to read.
I know, it's so large.
Okay. Yeah. But you can see where healing, it takes on all of those aspects, indigenous elements that we were talking about, the emotional, physical, the mental, spiritual, and then it
It's a
extends
beautiful
to
piece of artwork.
yes.
Yes.
And then there's the importance of connecting to land, energy issues, and then if you the spiritual aspect. Go down a little bit, scroll down instead of
thanks
horizontal.
and gratitude to
Yes.
the earth.
See,
Yeah.
there's the historical trauma at the bottom there.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Brenda, for sharing this map.
Oh, it was my honor.
Yeah. So.
Can I share something about sharing it too?
Yes, Brenda.
Which might somewhat upend people's ideas of things. You know, some of this was taken away from my family, certainly through colonization.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, my grandmother in my dreams told me to come back to this path because that I come from this line of women who carry medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was my mother's generation that lost it. So I recognize that the thread is, the mending is a little easier because it's not as many generations.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that, looking at this map, because I'm so visual, I can talk about all these things. I can lay it out in a bullet point thing. But seeing like this is an interwoven web,
mm-hmm.
with so many fingers, this is going to sound strange for people who perhaps feel like people of color, but I feel like I have a lot of privilege because I have more tools for navigating the world. And my husband has said this to me before. He said, you know, I feel like my husband is German Norwegian and is more disconnected from his ancestry. And he said, I feel like you have all these tools for navigating the world that I don't have and I want to learn. But he carries a lot of sorrow. So it's interesting, you know, when in those conversations I've realized I have a lot of privilege and I have a role to lead in sharing some of these tools with others for whom it has been lost.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Brenda. I feel that way too. Yeah. There's so many gifts that are accessible to us still. And my grandmother also visited me in my dream. That's why I'm doing this work. And yeah. How are we doing time-wise?
I think we should probably show the video if you want to introduce that.
Yeah. Okay. So I found this video. Well, I met Lila June Johnston recently, and I've been following her work since she appeared on Standing Rock. And she was at the Geography of Hope conference early this year, I think in April or May at Point Reyes. And there's a short clip available where she talks about forgiveness. Lila June Johnston is a Diné and also white. And she talks a little bit about how she has worked with the concept of forgiveness. So we're playing it right now.
You say that forgiveness is the most powerful medicine on earth. As an indigenous woman, you have to learn forgiveness. You must. Everything you're standing on your people's cemetery. You're standing on your people's suffering. You're standing on your people's genocide. You're going to school in a building that created that genocide and reinforces assimilation. You're being your tribal council is being bought out by companies that have brought people to their knees so deeply that we're willing to strip mine our reservations just for a little paycheck. Everything you live in is horror. I hate to say it, but as a Native woman, it gets like that sometimes. If you don't learn how to forgive, not to say that what happening is okay, and not to say that I don't spend every waking moment of my life working to heal it, but to say that through that process, I'm going to love the people who are hurting me. And through that process, I'm going to love the people who are pawns of a system. And so we really work to do forgiveness. And in Lakota, and I study a lot of Lakota philosophy, they call it Wokitunje. And this not only is a forgiveness, but it invites others into that space to forgive with you, to forgive themselves. And in this country, we need a whole lot of forgiveness. You would have to take a moment to really work counterintuitively, seemingly, where instead of indicting and persecuting and punishing that criminal, that you love them. You tell them, Lila, stand up, brush that dust off your shoulder, put your head up, put your shoulders back. You are Creator's warrior. You are Creator's warrior, and Creator wants you to come home and fight for his army again. And the only weapons we're going to give you is truth and faith and compassion. And so they say that if you do not forgive, you become the oppressor. You can pray for the ones who burned you. You unlock all the medicine inside of the earth, and she comes pouring out to heal the hearts of everyone. Because who can stand unfazed in the face of grace? Only the expertly numb. The rest, the majority of the world, shakes to its core every time forgiveness is administered. We think about all the greats, right? Dalai Lama, Tall Bull. We think about Nelson Mandela. We think about Gandhi. We think about Zacchaeus Vargos, the Diné ancestor. And we think about the Cheyenne, who would not fight. And because of their allegiance to nonviolence, changed American policy towards Native Americans forever. After Sand Creek Massacre happened, everything changed. Termination was no longer acceptable. And so we think about these greats, and one thing they all have in common is they're forgivers. And so we must forgive. We must forgive, because when we do this, we allow everyone to come back to that warrior for Creator that they were meant to be. Maybe not all of them will come home right away, but they will come home. And so I believe that forgiveness is something that we must not only administer to others, but to ourselves. When Morton County Police Station was arresting my brothers, when they were shooting women and with rubber bullets, and we were coughing up blood right there on the battle line, October 27th of last year, when the police were taking our women and strip searching them in the jail cells, all because we said water is life. When the choppers were flying so low to the ground, so low to the camps, so low that they could hear our prayers for them. When all of these things were going down in North Dakota against the Dakota Access Pipeline, we decided to go and forgive. And we went to Morton County Police Station and we encircled it with 1,000 people or more, holding hands. A whole block was surrounded by people, Native people, European people, Asian people, African people. And all of us whose brothers and sisters had been tormented by this police station through brutality. And we committed a ceremony of forgiveness. And we held that whole block, which consisted of clerks, jail cells, police stations. And we held it in this circle of forgiveness. And we sang songs of forgiveness, old songs about life and healing and beauty. And we forgave that day. We forgave. And through that, we were freed. And one of the Lakota guys who was a skeptic of forgiveness said, "Don't you forgive after someone hurts you? They're still hurting us." So you would think so, right? But if you practice forgiving, it'll become as natural as breathing. And you do it in the moment as it's happening. And then what did we do after we forgave? We went straight back to Ocheti Shakowin and started planning how we were going to stop that pipeline. So forgiveness does not mean you stop fighting for what's right. On the contrary, forgiveness allows you to fight more effectively for what is right. And it cleanses you of the same hatred you're fighting against.
Thank you so much, Laila. And what time is it? I'm just checking for time.
We have about
we have some time. Yeah.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to go into our visualization now as we envision the future? After just one thing I wanted to say about what Laila June is saying about forgiveness. I think for us in this group, this is not an attempt to unite or to speak of love and light, or to bypass anything. It's actually a call to go deeper into the difficult conversations we've been having, but in the spirit of wanting to learn how to forgive, wanting to learn how to be more compassionate, as Bayo has written about, wanting to really develop the skills for dealing with shadow work. So I hope it is an encouragement for us to continue working through our difficulties and having those difficult conversations, and not shirking from the responsibility and our sense of accountability to doing that work. So
maybe as a way of bringing this process to closure, just take a moment to close your eyes and connect with yourself internally, breathing. And as you remember the words that Laila just spoke, see, acknowledge what it means to you, where they touch you, where maybe you have resistance, where maybe you have welcome. Whatever it is that it stirs up inside of you, whatever words were the most meaningful for you, just take a moment to acknowledge those and take those in and sit with it and see what it means here in our group and what it might mean for the rest of your life. Just take a minute to ponder. And now, as you're doing this, maybe there is one intention, one prayer, one word that arises for you, and see what that might be. And then, in your own time, open your eyes, and I think we'll turn things over to Aaron and Bayo.
Erin? Or is it Brenda that is closing us today?
Well, I think we have
Yeah.
some things to share before we close. And
No, I think I'll rather not say anything, Aaron.
okay.
I think I want to offer silence to this, and yeah, and maybe a word of gratitude to Tita and Brother Jürgen, and to everyone who's spoken today, and to your stories coming through, breaking the boundaries. And if you felt today like you recognized yourself listening to others telling their own stories, then we're doing good work. Then we're becoming porous, and we're touching ourselves. So I want to give thanks to everything past, present, and yet to come that made this possible. To the invisible, to the chair that I'm sitting on, and to what you're sitting on, to all the agencies around us right now. Tita, thank you. Thank you so much for holding this space with us. And Brother Jürgen, Brother Jürgen, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. But our gratitude is for each other. Can we unmute our mics and say thanks to each other? To each other.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Paul.
Gratitude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nii, Kristen,
Thank you.
Marco.
for-
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
to the
you.
small group I was in. Mwah. Thank you, Shante, for reporting back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for being our timekeeper in our small group.
Thank you to Brenda's buffalo and her crystals.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brenda.
Don't forget, and maybe not now, but later, if you will, don't forget to give thanks for the things that stood in your way, and the things that were obstacles. Don't forget to thank them. They're a part of the way. Don't forget to thank the shadows. They are our great teachers as well. Don't forget. And yes, in thanking each other, be reminded that we're expressing gratitude because we're meeting shrapnels of ourselves that we haven't met yet. And we're knowing we're large and incomprehensible and mysterious. And that's a beautiful thing.
Bio.
So, yes, Keita.
One of the things we do in our classes when Jürgen and I teach ethno-autobiography is we have a shadow party at the end of the semester. And
Shadow party.
And we ask everyone to come dressed as their shadow. Maybe we should.
We should do that here, yeah. Because it's so often the most powerful thing that happens. And one time I had like 3 people, because it's optional, 3 people were willing to do it, and it was a class of, I think, 55. By the end, everybody had done it spontaneously. It was the most powerful process, and so healing.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the stories.
Thank you. Thank you for your stories. Thank you for my small group. I know you a little bit better now.
Nee wrote, thank you, ethno-autobiography.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Our gratitude is large. And thank you, Erin, for being our womb and our grandmaster and our big sister and our friend and so many things. Thank you. We love you deeply. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin.
And I'm going to sign off because I need to take my daughter.
Jürgen, let Brenda just quickly close us very quickly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everyone. I also want to thank you for the video. I was there with Lila at the Forgiveness Walk at Standing Rock, so it was beautiful to see that shared here. And I also want to share that I'm compelled because I was trained by one particular grandmother in Mexico, in Xochimilco, called Grandmother Amalia Salas, to do healing with roses, which involves forgiveness work, to move that energy through our bodies. And I feel compelled to offer that as a side offering for people who want to do it as an additional day. It'd probably be about an hour to an hour and a half long. And you would be required to buy roses to participate in the ceremony. And I'll share more about that online. For those who want to go deeper in the forgiveness work for themselves and others, it will help liberate you in some ways. So thank you. And definitely the sharing today is what made that want to come through. I feel like we should sing a song. So some of you may have heard it before. It's the one that goes, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. So we'll sing that, and we can go through peace, love, joy, but I want to also invite other people to add a different word if they want, whether it's peace, joy, playfulness, whatever it is, forgiveness. So we'll sing the first round, and then I'm going to just invite people to shout out a word that they want to replace peace with, okay? so that we get the tune down. I've got peace like a river. 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 I've got peace like a river in my soul. Is there a word people want to say? Shout it out.
Color.
What?
Color.
Color, color.
Color. I've got color like an ocean.
I've got color like an ocean.
I've got color like an ocean. I've got color like an ocean.
Like a
Color like an ocean. I've got color like an ocean in my soul.
One more word.
Shadows.
Shadows.
I've got
shadows like an ocean. I got
shadows like an ocean.
I've got shadows like an ocean in my soul.
I've
got shadows like an ocean. I've got shadows like an ocean. I've got shadows like an ocean in my soul.
Farts.
Like a, what are we going to say? I've got
farts
like
I got farts.
And I got farts like
Oh, ghosted my soul.
I've got like an ocean.
I've got farts like an ocean. I've like an ocean in my soul.
Good job, everybody. That was perfect to end on, Bio. I love you so much, and I'll connect with Erin about the rose harmonization and healing and forgiveness with rose ceremony.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Brenda, thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Love you all.